Welcome to another edition of Whiskey, Games, and Nerd Stuff. Today's whiskey, we are continuing to drink the High West Double Rye. Let's go ahead and take our sip. You can never go wrong with High West. And today's Nerd Stuff, I'm going to talk about a brief chapter or a section in this book that I had finished reading the other day called The End of Average. I'll go ahead and open this up to page 99, where it's the traits are a myth, and just read a brief section of it. Traits are a myth. Are you an extrovert or an introvert? This deceptively simple question plunges us into one of the oldest and most contentious debates in psychology, the nature of your personality. On one side of the debate are the trait psychologists, who argue that our behavior is determined by well-defined personality traits such as introversion and extroversion. These psychologists date their scientific origins all the way back to Francis Galton, who argued that human temperament and characters were durable realities and persistent factors of our conduct. Situation psychologists, on the other hand, claim that the environment drives our personality far more than personal traits. They believe that cultural and immediate circumstances determine how we behave, arguing, for example, that violent movies are likely to make people aggressive regardless of innate tendencies. The situation psychologists trace their origins to an equally impressive founder, Adolphe Quotet, and I'm probably saying that wrong, who famously claimed that society prepares the crime and the guilty are the only instrument by which it is executed. Let's go ahead and take a sip real quick. So I've really enjoyed this book, and anybody who's interested in this, I would highly recommend that you read the book. He'll be able to talk about everything in here far better than I ever will. But this is something that I've often talked about with a number of friends over the years. And I was reading this, I was kind of writing down certain questions to myself. I went through his book. And one of the things I wrote down, which at the beginning of it, I thought was kind of, when I read this particular section of Traits or Myth, made me really think about it. So some of the questions that I had written down was, do you think yourself as an introvert or an extrovert? What would your immediate family say? So if you're somebody in your immediate family was asked, are you an introvert or an extrovert? What would they say? What would your best friends say? What would your coworkers say? And does it depend on the context? How many of us out there would get different answers if somebody asked our immediate family, our partner, or even our children, parents? You pick any member of our immediate family, our best friend, or our coworkers. Would they all agree that you're an introvert, or would they all agree you're an extrovert? Or would it kind of be a mixture of that? And I got thinking about that a lot, and there was another section in here that it kind of made a lot of sense as I was thinking about that, so I'll briefly read that section. So on page 106, there's a section here called If-Then Signatures, and I'm just going to read the first part. Shota summarized his trailblazing findings in the aptly titled book, The Person in Context, Building a Science of the Individual, which, for the record, I'm going to go ahead and order that book and see if I can get it. In it, he provides an alternative to essentialistic thinking he calls if-then signatures. If you want to understand a coworker named Jack, for example, it's not particularly useful to say Jack is extroverted. Instead, Shota suggests a different characterization. If Jack is in the office, then he is very extroverted. If Jack is in a large group of strangers, then he is mildly extroverted. If Jack is stressed, then he is very introverted. Let me go ahead and take a sip of our whiskey. So this got me thinking of the other day of somebody I know very well, where a few years back, a lot of his immediate family and friends would have said that he's a true introvert. Didn't really like to go out much, didn't like to go out of the house, had a hard time being around strangers. It's been a few years, but I'm sure now it'd be diagnosed of, having some kind of anxiety And some people even said this particular person was on the spectrum at certain levels, just had a hard time being around strangers and people. And often at parties, this individual would always be that person that would kind of sit in the corner and be quiet. And a lot of people thought he was aloof and standoffish, but it was more of just, in that particular situation, he was very just kind of uneasy and uncomfortable for a variety of reasons. Well, fast forward a couple of years, this person, one day decided to go ahead and run for public office. So this person decided to run for public office, and a lot of his friends and immediate family didn't see how that was going to go. Fast forward, into it, and this person was going door to door campaigning, knocking on doors, talking to perfect strangers. They were going to campaign rallies and giving speeches in front of thousands of people. Did mailers, put themselves out there, did newspaper articles, did debates, was even interviewed on TV a few times. And I know this individual kind of thinks at the time, how in the world did they actually do these things? How did they put themselves in a position they did that? And I think a lot of it was if then. Yes, this person was an introvert. Yes, this person did not like being around crowds. Yes, this person had a hard time being comfortable, but it was a particular situation where they felt compelled to run for public office. And it was one of those things where, because they knew that it was important, they were able to put themselves in the position where they can trick themselves into being the extrovert and go out there. This same person still, you get to put them in a situation where there's just a few people. They're a lot more shy than they are in a group of 1,000 people, which to this day, this person still has, issues in those smaller groups. But you put them in front of 1,000 people, they'll have no problem talking. But it was just something I thought was interesting. Would love to hear some comments. And if you know people that are similar, I would love to hear if you consider yourself an introvert, an extrovert. Do you agree with the section in here? It kind of talks, it's more of an if-then. Do you find that if certain situations occur, then you're definitely an introvert? And if other situations occur, you're an extrovert? Or it could even be depending on who's around you. I do know a lot of people who, depending on who's around them, does kind of change their personality and whether they are introverts or extroverts. Anyway, it was one of those things I just want to talk about really quick. This was just a quick section on the end of average and a couple sections out of the book that I really thought was interesting. Highly recommend this book. If you would like to continue to hear more about these books or other books, please feel free to make a comment in the comment section. Would love to hear if you find yourself an introvert or extrovert. And until next time, cheers.